And now I'm going to introduce you to Moira, who is reading something out on behalf of Roger, who sadly, after all of his organisation, is unable to make this event, but we'll be watching it on the recorded version. Moira.
Okay, thank you. So nice to be here. So Roger sent a note, and I'll just read it. He said, I dearly wish I could be with you, but I'm on an Amtrak somewhere between Washington, D.C. and Brattleboro, Vermont, likely making it impossible to zoom in, though you might catch snippets of me here and there. I want to thank Nina Lewis and Polly Stratton for their efforts at making Tale of Two Cities 2 a success. And I also want to thank all the poets who I've heard have created some cross-Atlantic friendships and perhaps future visiting. Enjoy the day, and I look forward to hearing and seeing you on YouTube.
Thank you. So as Polly said, I'm just emceeing the first half is a little bit rich, really, because what I'm doing is just introducing poets in their pairs. I'm not really going to do too much emceeing. So our first pair this afternoon is Cindy Martell and Polly Stratton. So over to you, Cindy.
Shall I read? Mystical music. Oh, the years and oh, the tears, all the smiles and all the fears. You were here in the deep woods, flying among the oaks and pines during cloudy spring and summer weather and unabashed sunshine. Decades before we dreamed of building a home near yours, before we sat on camp stools, built a tiny stone encircled fire, sipped wine and talked about our futures together right here, you, like your predecessors, sang deliciously sweetening wildness with heavenly voices placed by the Creator's invisible hand in the delicate throats of shiny brown birds, who, because of their love of solitude and also their need for sheltered space, were called the hermit thrush. I have lived alone in the cabin we designed and built together for 22 years. And every spring, my aging human heart is placed on hold until that breathtaking moment I hear your song on a silent spring evening, and my faith is restored in nature's cycles instituted by divinity. A sacred cycle that leads you away from my home at a time triggered by an instinct still not comprehended by the cleverest biological researchers. Though your migrational journey may not be as geographically exotic as some, it is a blessing for those of us who yearn, since you are among the earliest of the wood thrushes to return in the spring. Over the years, most have thought of you as early morning and evening songsters. But this spring and summer, you have regaled us with what seems at times unprecedented, continuous singing during the entire day, from dawn to darkness. Though it puzzles me and other listeners, all are grateful for additional rapturous melody. But do ponder the change in song scheduling. Perhaps it's a gentle bird's empathy delivered to a humanity needing more music and beauty.
Thank you, Cindy. It's the most beautiful call poem, and I wrote in response, spellbound. The blackbird puts in a song shift, opens his delicate throat to flute and chook dreamy lyrics. He flies to the May tree, where hips and haws shine a late summer show. No bird table in the front garden. Crumbs are scattered on the path for ground feeders. Crackling mealworms and grubs appear as if by magic. Goldfinches babble and chant out back, eat fat balls, peanuts, sunflower seeds, by a water bath at the bird station. Red and gold flashes chase insects in ivy, tease teasels, thrill at thistles. We bide here, see a dormant hydrangea doze by the spellbound oak tree. This mystic rural space is loved beyond imagining. Autumn blushes the horizon. The world turns, performs calls and responses, and the blackbird sings a delicious sweetness in the wild. Thank you.
Thank you both to Cindy and Polly. I forgot to say, if whatever gadgets you're watching from, if you change it to speaker view, that will be best for you, I believe, to see the poets that are reading. So our next pair of poets is Liz Parks and Nicole DiCello. So over to Liz.
So, drought. We no longer dream in green. Nights sweat into parched days of withered grass, brindled and wilting. Crazed earth breathes fierce, soil shrinks to a callous skin. A slump of flowers smears drab beds, exhausted trees curl and crisp. Across a swoon of endless blue, a plane scratches a vapour trail above burning heath, sluggish rivers, desiccated fields. Ribs of long-lost dwellings reveal beneath the veil of land a shadowy time of shades of green, old dream of green. Bleached fields, shorn of a depleted harvest, give way to estates where traffic stirs the tarmac swelter, bricks radiate, and beneath reflective glass a squabble of politicians seal themselves in like snails, wait for the heat to pass. Thank you.
I love that. So I wrote a response, drought. In this summer of my life, I thought you'd be fecund and flowing. Carpets of green grasses, torrents eddying into pools of plenty. Enough is in the eye of the beholder. My eye blazes, sets heat onto each new surface it touches. I convince myself this seeing sets the unrelenting August sun to torch the tender leaves of the tulip poplar we planted 6 years ago, sear them into the crisp sheets of a tobacconist's fancy till they destem in a grand rejection of their wooden home. Corpses of a lost world, out-of-season souls stranded on a new bed. This was how I found myself, riddled with the sex of so many men, lost in a garden of my own delight.
Wow, when you're still saying wow and you're supposed to be unmuting. Thank you both. Our next pair are Lena Batchelor and Tony Brown. So over to you, Lena.
This is Ephemerae. Mineral taste of sap rising, the bile of life. We overestimate our own importance, and in the sadness of existence, negate the joy of life. Liquid breath slides into my lungs and slows the weight of trauma pouring into the well of my soul. Crushed. This is society's vanity of perceived invincibility. The mockery of salvation reaches from the delineation of our demise into the apathy prevalent in our dismissal of others' importance. the alchemy of beauty and life lost in the exuding music of disregard, issuing from time-weary consumerism and neglect of kindly gestures, seeing with eyes devoid of soul, hearing with ears that have become mere echo chambers of repetition, disconnected from reason and heart. If we care not for our own kind, how can we claim this care for the lump of rock upon which our histories are played and etched into the forgotten and fragile gems beneath the layers of mud, water, and time?
Thank you, Lena. I like that piece very much. When it came time to write a response, I was very much in the mood of thinking about things that are ephemeral, even the things that we don't think of as being ephemeral. This is Hank Starling and Henrietta Mourning Dove. I'm out early to put the trash on the curb and to fill again the feeders for my voracious neighbor birds, currently waiting in dark masses like clouds, stuck to the eaves and entangled in the top branches of the few trees visible from here. It takes little time for them to see what I've done. They come in hot and start feeding before I'm back inside. I call the birds my neighbors because, as with the human ones, I know individual birds on sight without in fact knowing their individual names. In the city, we tend to live like this until some tragedy hits. We only learn each other's names when we gather briefly with the remaining neighbors to watch as they are taken away by ambulance. It's not the same with the birds, of course. They tend to depart this life in the mouth of the cat from across the street, whose name is Crazy. We call him Tuxie. And I never say, ah, there goes Hank Starling, or looks like Tux got Henrietta Mourning Dove, even though generally speaking, I miss them more than I do the people. I wonder if the birds feel the same. Will they say, damn, feeder guy is gone, when it's my turn to be taken away? Will they miss me? Chirp, thoughts and prayers. The question hangs above me, dark mass in the trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Lena and Tony. So powerful to hear these poems being read aloud and thinking about how they just wouldn't exist without the cool poem to begin with. So we're going to move on with more magic now. We have got the next pairing of Susan Roney O'Brien and Jenna Plews, but Susan's poem is going to be read by Claire Golding, who was in the original Tale of Two Cities project. So I'm delighted that she can come and read. So passing you forwards to Claire Golding, reading Susan's poem, and then Jenna Plews.
Thank you, Nina. It's lovely to be here. And it's always an honor to read Susan's work. So it is said there will be suffering. A splinter jams between nail bed and nail. A mosquito pierces your wrist and sucks her share, dodges the swat. Your ankle clicks, snaps as you lug a load of laundry down the stairs. In childbirth, a boulder passes through that small private part of you, and you name what was fire and light. Your child grows, fails, and blames you for what you've always feared true. And your father, who never expected to fester, harbors that marauder cancer doctors cut and chop and burn from flesh. They try to catch death, but it can't be stopped, except sometimes, like last night, when I sat in the deepest water the tub could hold, my body aching. Standing, I watched a spider let itself down its own thread into the water, legs opening, closing, like an anemone, the body convulsing, and I did not reach in to pull the living creature from the flow, but stared as it spun toward the silver drain and was taken from me.
My goodness, you read that absolutely beautifully. And it was really lovely working with Susan. And I hope we shall meet again because she's in this country. So my response was, they tell me splinters will work their way out. Wounds scab over, bones knit. We massage memories, embroider and delete, soften the pain, learn to keep death at bay. But there will be paths that peter out, crevasses that open under our feet, tsunamis that sweep away our careful plans. We'll ignore the warning signs, choose the wrong man, trust a frayed rope, cross our fingers and jump, learn the hard way. Swallows were late this year, nested in the eaves as usual. We watched them raise 3 young, read their looping writing on the sky, heard the twitter of a second brood, followed the frenzied to and fro of feeding, while days cooled and flocks crotcheted the telegraph wires. Sometimes there is no choice, the doors slammed shut. After the swallows left, we found the chicks and buried them. Thank you.
Thank you both. I'm struggling to breathe right now. These poems are incredible. And I quite like the fact that it's taking just that few seconds delay between the mics, because it just gives that time for the poems to settle with us. So our next pairing is Denny Caldwell and Derek Littlewood. So over to you, Denny.
Thank you, Nina. Newton's spider. I awake one December morning, and in those moments when my eyes search left and right, up and down for the day's first event, I see above me a black speck moving along the beam that spans the ceiling, a small spider doing what ceiling spiders do. I consider the ability of this spider to coordinate 8 legs, walk upside down as gravity beckons its little body to free fall like Newton's apple, which would not happen to this spider with its silky drag line always ready, a tether against equal opposite reaction. But everyone remains in balance. The spider forages above, the cats sleep back to back, purring, and I, under the covers, am amazed.
Thank you, Denny. Well, what to reply to that? I'm not a scientist, as will become apparent. There's a little prose preface, just a couple of lines from Newton's own writing. All things from the substance of God and called the sun and stars, consubstantial to him and compared, illegible, him to him a spider, as if he formed the word out of himself, as a spider forms her web out of her own bowels. Many detest spiders who swing from the ceiling on a silken rope, extruded from their bodies, their 8 limbs balanced in air, defying gravity. Some abhor calculus that the mind of Newton invented or discovered to figure the orbits of heavenly bodies' motions through space. They say he lusted for algebra more than women or men. They say he was a queer fish who kept a cat, Spithead, in his room at Trinity, making her a flap in his door. When she had kittens, he cut kitten holes too, not realizing that they would follow their mother out into the light. As he poked his eye with a bodkin, experimenting. The existence of his cat is not to be proved. Neither is there any evidence that Newton called poetry ingenious nonsense, though poets spin worlds of words out of our bodies like spider silk.
Oh, that was marvelous. Thank you so much. I'm coming in now because our next reader is Nina Lewis, who's going to be reading Circle of Fifths and the response from Robin Boucher, These Things We Carry. Over to you, Nina.
Thanks, Polly. Okay. Circle of Fifths. I let Bing bring me to jazz. Music I know will deliver me to you, to Sunday mornings in a hot, smoky kitchen. You swaying between bubble and squeak and fried eggs, orchestrating black pudding for 5. Dancing and tapping your feet across the green carpet tiles to a syncopated rhythm which carries far too much tempo for a hazy weekend. Your tunes drowned out by overexcited children settled you to your happy place. A swing or trill better than sunny side up. In your own world, behind those closed doors, you were playing with the best. Every Sunday morning when we got back from church, we'd find you here in the kitchen, catch your second hour of freedom. I was impressed with your ability to not stress over burning mushrooms, possible pan fires. Not allowed to watch you create your magic. I felt it through the wall.
Okay. So the responses so many times can go in so many directions. This poem from Nina was lovely. My response, these things we carry with us through our lives, things from our past that shape our going forward and our looking back, inexplicably tilting our trajectory, our perspective, all the places we land, and how well we will or won't do. Outcomes impinged upon us by the decisions and actions of others or our own. These things we carry, right or wrong, good or bad, justified or not, all with unforeseen consequences, lead us down our paths to the places we land.
Thank you, Robin. It's a really surreal experience, isn't it, hearing your response poems? And I do apologise, I've not been introducing poet and title, just poet, but everybody knows how important their titles are and they're letting us know what they are. So our next pair of poets, we've heard from her earlier, but she was with the words of Roger. So Maura McNeil and Margaret Adkins are our next pair of poets. Over to you, Maura.
Thank you. Then, I walk through days parting curtains between one world to another. In this thin-veiled season, mist mornings open to flaxen, then juniper green-hued days. Slants of sharp suns settle and lift, lift and settle. Ghosts follow. Yesterday, the news of another friend gone. Then, last night, a long ago beloved, 2 years dead, arrives to my sleep. I swear, my God, there was a living pulse beneath his skin, and those hard stones lodged in my throat too long from too much loss tumbled onto my tongue, and I spit them out with deep bone grief. How to live in this world of loss that chips away at us day by day. He does not answer, does not speak. Then the dog stirred. Then the slant of light on the bed. Then the song of the dead with their wooden spoons and cooking pot drums. Wake up with love, with love.
When I read Maura's poem, I felt such a deep connection with it, and this is my response. Yes, and then, just as warm sun rakes the mist, the aching thins. I get up to cherish the living. Matter, I know, still exists beyond death, for none is created or extinguished. The imprint of his arms will still circle when I pour a gin, when I walk the hills, when I lose what was his, when I unglove the warmth in his hand around mine in that dream. Now I am awake, I will love, like mushrooms, like jewels reaching out of sapwood for air. I will love like the log pile of seasoned wood stacked high for the hearth. I will love like a fistful of ash for polishing silver.
Wow. I still need to build at least a 4-second interval in before I open my mic in between poems. Incredible work going on. Our next pair of poets are Sue Johnson and Jennifer Freed. So over to you, Sue.
Thank you. After the Storm, written in August 2020 during the COVID-19 lockdown in the UK. The water butts are full and the early morning air is cooler, but weather forecasters predict more heat later today. The sky is grey and sullen. The branches on the silver birch move indolently. We go out for a walk and you complain about traffic and noise pollution, and I move one foot in front of the other in a waking dream that smells of incense smoke and orange blossom and tastes of overripe nectarines. The water lilies on the pond are like cupped hands. The air is heavy as a blanket waiting to drop on us. I'm not sure if I hear a plane or distant thunder. I feel stuck and lifeless. I pray for more rain.
My poem is called The Beginnings of Never Before, and it's especially inspired by one line from Sue's poem, which is a waking dream that smells of incense smoke and orange blossom. On the news, hospital workers wore bruises bridging their noses. They hurried down hallways in billowing trash bags and graduation gowns. We learned the meaning of PPE, of essential worker, of shared air. Sleep wandered off, spent a night nestled in old sweatpants, another in a documentary about penguins. The weeks yawned, stretched, rolled into months. Calculus and psychology tumbled into bed, which served also as desk. Our teenage daughters wanted us to play Clue, Boggle, Risk. We watched the cat rest her naps in sunspots as the days rounded the windows. Sliced sourdough bread, warm from our oven, inhaled deeply.
Wow, I put it in chat, but I'll say it for those people that aren't accessing the chat, just how incredible it is to have within this body of work that's been produced some poems that are reflective of lockdown and that pandemic. Yeah. Thank you both. Our next pair is Tim Stavert and Roger Martin, but Roger Martin, as we know, unless he's here somewhere, is in transit. So again, I welcome back Moira McNeil, who will read Roger's poem. So over to you, Tim.
Okay, this is called Return of the Gods. Whenever I look up to the skies, with white clouds and a shade of blue, I wonder if the gods are still there, or up in space watching down on me and you. So I wait until the sunset to look again, when I see a galaxy of stars above, glittering from millions of light years, gracing the skies of the views I love, blown into history before our time, with patterns recreating a cosmic show, and introduce astrological studies to man, who will believe but will never really know. We will one day see the return of the gods down to earth, this tiny speck in space, and put right the sins of man in this God-forsaken place. Maybe it will be then we will live without war, not knowing what we are fighting for.
So I'm reading for Roger, poem in response to Return of the Gods. The lessening late summer sounds, that woody, warm silence of absence, reminds one the cool autumn comes. At the Italian restaurant specializing in homemade pasta, the gods take their seats at a round wooden table. The wine steward brings a red from Sardinia, uncorks it with a flourish, and pours her a slip of liquid. She twirls the glass and sips. The god closes her eyes, sniffs and smiles. Very fine, tastes like the earth that bore it. And after her just perceptible nod, the steward fills halfway each of the god's glasses. They toast their arrival, lament they have been gone so long, lament the last time here, their knot of opposition, sparkling anger. One says, let us pray people learn as we did, and they join hands and pray.
Another wow. Our next pairing, sorry, there was a pen in the way, how professional. Our next pairing is Beth Sweeney and Polly Stretton. Over to you, Beth.
Hello, everyone. It's so lovely to be here. These poems are wonderful, and it's delightful seeing them being read from people's private little spaces. It just feels very intimate, and it's just lovely to hear how the poems echo each other. My poem is a call poem, but it's actually sort of a response poem because I wrote it last summer. I'm in a poetry workshop with Eve Rivka, who's about to read, and Eve sent out a poem to us, which was called My First Job. I can't remember if that's still the title or not. And even before I read it, I thought, well, I could write a poem about my first job. So that's what this poem is. It's called Ethel, and I should say that it refers to a popular American TV show that maybe you know, I'm not sure if you would or not, called I Love Lucy in the first line. Ethel actually looked like Ethel Mertz in I Love Lucy, but never smiled, just squinted sourly at me behind her bifocals. I was 18. She made me stock our station with cups and saucers, stacked onto cups and saucers, with cutlery wrapped tight in napkins, with pitchers of ice water sweating, while she disapproved. She stuck me with 2 tops that were really singles, while she got the 4 tops where laughing people ordered oysters and steak. She scolded me for serving the special before the owner tasted it. She told me a dead soldier means bring another bottle. She saddled me with elderly regulars like Miss Mary, who ordered crab soup every night, demanding it be strained for her, but never tipped. Ethel warned me not to report that cockroach I found, curled up in a basket of rolls. She made me serve anyone seated after 8:30 so she could cash out early. One night, I had to stay till almost 10, and my mother, waiting in the foyer, introduced herself when Ethel plodded toward the door. That poor woman, my mother said as she drove down the quiet streets. Her husband's been sick for years, and that's why, at her age, she has to work.
Oh, that was just lovely, Beth. Thank you. And when I read Beth's poem about Ethel, who so clearly meant so much to her, I responded with a poem about Nancy. I never saw Nancy without a pinny. A dumpy little woman, straight talking, bustling, with her hair drawn tight in a bun at the nape of her neck. When she spoke, she peered over wide-rimmed specks, perched low on her nose. She knitted for everyone. Her fingers flew, blurs over rows that grew and grew until a fine white lacy shawl for a newborn appeared. I delivered her Sunday paper, the only one she took. I got to know her. Come in for a cuppa, she'd say. And though I shouldn't, I did, and watched as she put a battered kettle on a battered stove with just enough water to make a pot of tea. The ritual always the same. Kettle almost boiling. You can tell 'cause the whistle starts to bleat. Warm the teapot. Swill a little nearly boiling water in the pot and tip into the sink. Put 2 teaspoons of loose tea into this warmed pot, and when the kettle is whistling a shriek, pour the water onto the leaves. It was the best tea in the world. I grew up. Nancy got older. A lad took on the paper round. From time to time, I dropped in on Nancy, and when I was expecting, she made me a shawl for my firstborn. Not that I knew her knitting was for me. It could have been for anyone. But no, it was for me, or rather, my baby. Nancy told me her love was killed behind Japanese lines. There could be no other for her, no babies. Her joy when she came to the christening with a hat on and saw her shawl around my boy made my mother weep. Nancy's long gone, and I am old. My children christened their children in that shawl, and their children will do the same. Thank you. He said, here is Nina Lewis with Set Steps and Eve Rifka, The Need for Forest. Thank you.
Thanks, Polly. So this one's called Set Steps, and it's after Chimpanzee by Francis Bacon. On stage, we were never ourselves. Bodies fired with adrenaline, we'd kiln hard to survive the industry. captive circus animals. No one was cruel as such, but we were made to wear our skin like costume, taught to balance our bodies and stow away the mind, judged and paraded, our affliction caught in oil, solidified, displaced the torture. When we started eating insects, they'd retire us. Choreography is difficult for a bipedal dancer, less possible with a shrunken brain. Nostrils widen with the smell of grease paint and resin, the need for forest.
I took Nina's last line to be the title of my poem, The Need for Forest. Shadows and strips of light between bare branches, car rumbles in ever-distancing hum, lost to leaf rustle and crackle underfoot. Mind overflowing with memories, make-believe conversations, demands that pull flesh from form. In the forest, breezes play on skin, soft touch, breath deeper, deeper, in, out, shoulders hunch, relax, words streaming behind as lost crumbs, no way back, no way, no. I lie down on pine needles, searching dust motes spin in the air, sight rising to the sky, heart hidden, a bird calls to another.
Wonderful, thank you. The delight of hearing the response poem read to you by the poet is it doesn't diminish. That was a wonderful first half. If everybody would like to unmute and just celebrate with a clap, a cheer, a whoop, whatever you feel.
Hey.
Absolutely.
Woo.
And our first pairing is Polly and Cindy. Over to you, Polly.
Thanks very much, Nina. So we're starting off with my call poem, Ravens, and Cindy's coming back with Crow Shadow. Lots of birds I noticed this time in Atotc, which is really lovely because I love birds. So this is Ravens. We hear a raven bark deep in the dark, cool larches. Think it a wild boar at first, a grunt. Then his mate, in gentler tone, responds to his call high up in the greenery. We can't see them, peer as we might. And why should we? Two small humans as specks to those wide wingspans. Why would they care to show themselves to insignificance?
My poem is called Crow Shadow in response to Polly's wonderful poem. Crow Shadow. Crow's dusky shadow floats dreamily over fading lawns, waning gardens, a frail feather drifting on the winds. Glistening onyx eyes scrutinize those wingless beings rooted to the ground, observers of the piteous pathos below. Instinctively, we lift our eyes skyward, pondering the gift of wings to crows, when we are so much closer to angels.
Beautiful, thank you very much, Cindy. Now we have Nicole Di Cello I could go back to February 1863, followed by Liz Park's response, if I could go back to May 1886. So some history coming up now. So Nicole.
Thank you. So the title of my poem is actually 1963. I'm not sure how it got to 18, but that's okay. But it does make a difference because you'll know that this person did not live in the 1800s. So if I could go back to February 1963, I would make Sylvia Plath soup. A clear broth of new potatoes, spring turnips, comfort. Then square it on the placemat before her. And perhaps she'd weep as she'd draw the first spoonfuls, but I'd rub her back like a nurse nanny while she inhaled wet sobs on her cigarette. Nothing would peel, or perhaps the corners of the linoleum in their waxy rigidity would curl like rebellious teenagers. But none of it would matter. We'd cackle over the cocktails I'd pour. To hell with health, the birthright of men. What we'd revel in would be more wicked. To alight the descending staircase, a pivot of hooves, hips, breasts, our minds' mausoleums twining like clematis, that purple-starred beauty ordained, foisting lit nightmares on semiotics not yet brave enough to keep up, brave enough to truly listen. I am legion of her, would whisper this in her ear, root mother, witch mistress, not mad but peripatetically genius, bleeding her grievances, tulips and eye motes and cauldrons onto all those sacred papyri, footpaths of some Byzantium goddess, illuminating the dark.
I absolutely loved Nicole's poem, and I found it quite difficult to respond to. This is my effort. If I could go back to May 1886, I would simply say, immortality, Miss Dickinson, you nailed it, as I arranged jonquils, scarlet tulips in an emerald glass. There would be air leavened by baking bread and her flowers, scents I'd hoped speak life to a calvary of pain beneath the opiate. I'd plump her pillow so she could see the sloping garden, laurel hedge, the huge circumference of meadow grass. Maybe with a casual swipe across my phone, I'd show a telescope unfold in space to find galaxy on galaxy. I'd tell of centuries of wonders while she'd study the tremendous strangeness of the fly busying around her window pane. I'd find myself garrulous, a rush of close-up inconsequence, until I'd remember why I came. Emily, I'd say, you never weighed your poetry against the others, held your course, believed. Help me. Words, she'd say. Words are my key. If they fit, it's just a turn to freedom. Words, my dear, and brevity. Thank you.
Oh, marvellous, Liz and Nicole. They're two wonderful poems about poets, which make them even more special in my view. Beautiful poems, thank you so much. So now we're moving on to Tony Brown with Liminality and Lena Batchelor with Sawen. So Tony, to you.
Hi. By the way, I just wanted to say a quick hello to Nicole and to Beth, who I saw on screen earlier and neglected to say hi to. I haven't seen Nicole in a while. Beth I just saw recently, but it still feels like I needed to say hi. So, this being the time of year that is frequently referred to as the time when the veil is thinnest between the worlds, This is liminality. Be here now upon a bleak peak outdoors just before daylight. Can you become animal enough to admit your excitement at liminality is not rational? That it lives upon a distant cliff within you where you are holding on by the skin of your last inhuman gene to natural rhythms, and is not the same as anticipating the alarm that rouses you for work. Be here now, in the space between slats of these room-darkening blinds. It is not bright outside, but somehow even pre-dawn shines in this second. Be here now, in this second, as it is neither for you nor against you, that you woke before dawn, that you felt it before you saw it, that you were in it before it started, that it is inside you, an animal stirred from sleep before spring becomes apparent. Thank you.
Wow. And that was my response with Samhain. Shadows that dance across the leaves, fingered twigs branching neath the wind, spectred plumes clouding skulking paths, the call back for souls tonight. With interleaved legions of pagan souls, like-minded with life, yet unbeknown, the veils fade with whispered breaths, and call substance to your sight. Softly treading upon the clouds that filter through your mind, ancestral memories gain apace, while masked visions affront your senses and stand before you once more. Sunrise dissipates wisps of evening, rain washes fresh the leaves, paths now brightly lit show the day, recollections fade away. Yet the heartbeat touch fingers trace ice through your veins, a shadow slow to fade smiles and beckons your soul.
Oh, two wonderful seasonal poems, very, very appropriate for All Hallows Eve. Absolutely fabulous. Thank you both very much. Now we have Susan Roney O'Brien, Inside the Tambour Frame, read by Claire Golding, followed by Jenna Pugh's A Card in the Cathedral. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you. Inside the Tambour Frame. On our wedding trip, I used a plastic cap as an embroidery hoop to stitch a yellow house framed by a leaning fruit tree, never imagining Lachesis directed my hand to our farm, jonquil house, a managed orchard. When fruit trees do not bear, we take them down, fire up the stove, burn heartwood, replant. In the side field, we walk among the young, assess growth, leaves, apple, peach, pear, planted perhaps too late in our lives for us to share their harvest or shelter. Oval leaves embroider shade. There are still hours left in the day, days left in the year, maybe years left, and maybe, out of the blue, a miracle, growth before its time, the glint of light on burgeoning fruit. Each spring, the house color dims. Perhaps Atropos will stay her hand. Seasons shift, planets dance their ellipses as always. Constellations stitch the sky, stars outline Cassiopeia, who slips into view. Seems I fashioned our fate unaware. No matter. The Moirai steered us. We till the earth, plant, reap, and conserve, framed by a French knot fruit tree. My needle's plunk has rooted us here. Thanks.
Thank you. That sounded lovely, the way you read it. This was my response. A card in the cathedral workshop. A card in the cathedral gift shop. It's supposed to be a comforting thought, the message on the card in the cathedral gift shop. The messy fabric of our lives with its grubby fingerprints, broken threads, mistakes and tangled knots is just the underside. One day we'll see it right side up, its pattern making sense at last. Today the skies washed clean, the air heady with ripening. I grip the ring of the basket. Above my head the swell of the balloon, an occasional belch of flame. Far below, a patchwork of fields, trimmed hedges, and in the distance a cross-stitch of streets and houses, a railway line pinned in place. Shuttered shops, abandoned trolleys, broken glass and empty takeaways. The sound of grinding gears, sirens and shouting have shrunk to nothing. No diesel fumes, no scent of joss sticks or jasmine reaches us. We sail steadily on. I see a spire, the grey bulk of a church, a grid of gravestones. Think of the card with its well-meaning message. Wonder who first scribed it on vellum or scrawled it on the wall of his cell, whether it comforted him or not.
Oh, another two wonderful poems. I think we must all acknowledge that Nina she must have been truly inspired when she came up with A Tale of Two Cities and asked Worcester, USA to pair with people in Worcester, UK. It was a genius project, and to come back again and do it on Zoom is amazing. And those two poems, I think, absolutely capture what it's all about. And the beautiful delivery by Claire of Susan's Inside the Tambour Frame, followed by Jenna's wonderful A Card in the Cathedral gift shop. Beautiful poetry. It's fantastic to think that one poem can lead to another wonderful poem. It's brilliant. Such a privilege to be here. Thank you so much, Jenna and Claire. Now we're going to go to Derek Littlewood with Bridge and Denny Caldwell with Determination.
Thank you. Bridge. I fell asleep on the last August day, my back against the bridge wall, a grass-green footway made of brick over the Worcester to Birmingham Canal, facing another wall of spalling brick, grey-green lichen, algae and fungi fused together. A bridge over water with a 5-bar gate each end. The other side of the water is always seen, yet seldom visited, except by a fleeting skip over a locked gate. But no towpath to tread that side. Grandmother born on board in Tipton Basin, a week away by horse-drawn barge, and 155 years might just have passed her way to Worcester, under the bridge which crosses the water, beneath a farmer leading his cattle. No sheep or cows today, just some wool on the thorns of a dog rose next to the hips. Convolvulus, twining in bramble and hawthorn, yellow rays of common cat's ear in the dust, a place of ghosts poised between earth and earth. a distance too far to jump. The ancestors thought it unlucky to swim in the cold, green, grey waters. I wake with a shiver despite the warm weather. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek, for that great inspiration for what became determination. She vowed this child would be born anywhere other than Birmingham on the canal if need be, or she'd walk to Worcester, but damn that new railway and its smoke, too quick a journey to troublesome ends. It will never get one penny from her purse. She'll get there by canal water and brave the shadows and webs that live under the bridges where angels and trolls play tricks when no one is looking. So be it if the coal boat leaks, the horse near blind, the master older than dirt. All are steady and know every foot of the way. Not the first birth on this river, she mused, and will not be the last, she predicted, as they made their way past the fires, through the soot of black country, not stopping in Tipton even to record the girl's birth. Someone awaits their return to home.
Oh, two lovely poems about the waterways of Worcester. That's fantastic. Thank you both very much indeed. We're going now to Robin Boucher for Thoughts from a Walk and Nina Lewis with Fragments of Green. So over to Robin next, please.
Thank you. Thoughts from a Walk, Prologue. Summer afternoons outside, the child finds mom bent over the butter lettuce, a dented aluminum strainer nearby, filled with the warm green leaves. In the folds of her shirt, large tomatoes, perfectly red and round. The child looks up at the sky, then up at the trees on each side. Seeing this open garden space, protected by wooded areas, she realizes for the first time the smallness of herself and her mom. When they look for her nearing dinner, it is here they find her. Today, out with the dogs, I walk and stop many times. Always a new treasure to inspect, always a new thought to mull. Simple things triggering memories, aspen or birch leaves, their color, daintiness, soft fluttering. Huge acorns with hats intact, their deep rich color, wondrous shape, and the silkiness of the shells. As a child, I often carried one in my pocket. Walking and stopping, surrounded by maples, oaks, and pines. Spotting a tiny gray tree frog, I take its picture. The swish of evergreen needles catches my ear, as does the red-winged blackbird with its calls by the water. The poor dogs, ever patient when the stopping becomes staying in one place. In my notebook, I record thoughts, sights, smells, the feel of the breeze on my skin, sounds, those close by, those in the distance. Stopping to regard a fern, I take its picture and bend to touch its leaves. Unexpectedly, after all these years, Mom's image while in the garden comes back to me.
Robin, your poem sits right in my chest, and especially when you read it. So I could definitely connect to the treasures and thoughts in Robin's poem. and I managed to get a dog walker in there as well. Fragments of green. Summer afternoons in the garden, making mud pies and daisy rice pudding, waving at Mum, busy in the kitchen. How those days stretched with light. Somewhere between this memory and her present, there were houses without gardens. Her feet missed the touch of grass, the freedom of planting. The summers in that first garden are still vivid today, as if life could never fast forward. Even now, she fills her pockets with pine cones and feathers whenever she walks in nature. Before her mum's hip grew too old, they'd walk the wild tracks together, stop often for body rest and deep breath, admire the vast horizon of sky, share stories of cloud. Often they'd amble in silence until a passing dog walker bid good morning. The whole time her head was filled with words. Her mum couldn't understand the phone being used, but sometimes she had to text herself the phrases, worried she'd lose them before they reached the gate back to the road.
Oh, another two beautiful poems. Love and loss and memories and dogs, just two beautiful, beautiful poems. Thank you so much, Nina and Robin. And now it's Margaret Adkins with Back to Baking and Maura McNeil with Those I Love. Margaret.
Thank you, Polly. So another pandemic poem, Back to Baking. Mum was the hook on the back of the kitchen door for keeping a pinny tidy. Mum was the cake that chased cholesterol through our arteries when we raced back home, hungry for after-school telly. Mum comes back to life on the back of the kitchen door to keep a pinny tidy. I don't usually use one, but when I do, I need a hook, as I did in lockdown, when my pinny came crumpled from the back of a drawer, when I was the glaze on a bowl, letting batter slip into tins, when I was cake every day of every week, shimmying cholesterol through arteries of those I love.
So my poem is titled Those I Love, and I took the last line of Margaret's and did a response. Those I love. I have walked past water, and slanting light skimming the surface brings memory of deep night dreaming, when those I love, who have returned to dust, come back to me. And I have found in the spruce grove beyond the hill, beyond my house, that if my body stands still enough, every motion wrapped within this forest hesitates for a moment, as if listening, as if waiting for the jagged slice of sun that might reach down between boughs to stretch across the forest floor as sky moves between this mountain and the hills to the west. Then a shift as I move beneath the crown rustle from wind clouds that sound of sky waves overhead, that palpable echo of what is lost as it tries to find its way home.
Oh, again, two beautiful poems, and thinking a little bit about the pandemic, Margaret, but it could have been almost any time, and it's just about family and love and loss and memories, and so was yours, I think, Maura. Beautiful poetry. Thank you so much, and you clearly inspired each other. Now we're going to move on to Jennifer Freed with Adularescence and Sue Johnson with Betty. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you. And I just want to say it's wonderful to hear all of you and to see some faces that prior to this I only had names for. This poem, I don't usually use titles that are such obscure words, but I chose this for a few reasons, one of which is that it means a glow or a sheen that's not just from reflection of light, but that comes from within, from the crystal structure from within, as with a moonstone. And there is a moonstone that appears in this poem. Adolescence. Behind your closed eyes, you guide your starship past Orion. You whisper about grain supplies, warp speeds, light years. Back on Earth, your wife and I keep watch beside your rasping body. The metastases have traveled everywhere. Even in your semi-dream, you hear me ask you where you're going. Your body has grown gray and slight. Your lungs have both collapsed. Base camp, you whisper, waiting for me. Seeds. So, as everywhere you've ever gone, you carry bud and bloom and green. I imagine biodomes, their moonstone sheen rounding plains of dry space rock, iridescent as our mother's moonstone ring. For a moment, you and I are small. Dinner simmers on the stove, and we are watching Star Trek on TV, enraptured by the lives beyond our galaxy. You will never eat again. The nurses give your body what it needs to be at ease. You lie still, serene, mostly gliding now. Then your eyes abruptly open and you beam at us. Hello, how did you get here? You take in the tubes, machines, electronic beeps. Your wife thinks fast, strokes your cheeks, tells you to mind the control panels, tells you they need you in the colony. Again, you close your eyes. All day, you drift. That night, you lift your index finger, gaze, amazed that it is glowing blue. You say it is your portal. There are two, you whisper. One is where the word is always no. The other, and your finger faintly moves, draws a tiny circle in the air. This one is where everything is possible.
Jennifer's beautiful poem inspired a lifetime of memories about an adopted cousin who is 10 years older than me, who has, ever since I can remember, worn a moonstone ring. Betty, you were the chosen one, adopted during the war. Your life was candy floss and marshmallows, ballet lessons, and visits to France, eating apricots from the tree. As a child, I envied your Cilla Black hairdo, pink varnished nails, and leather handbag, soft as butter. Then, like dominoes falling, you failed your audition for Sadler's Wells, began drinking, became an unmarried mother. Dad said you'd gone off the rails and warned me never to behave like that. I knew about railway tracks. My other granddad was a train driver. Your adoptive parents papered over the cracks, cared for you and your child, sent you to a clinic. You met and married a man older than your father, said you'd spent your life feeling like a square peg in a round hole, never the nice little girl they wanted. Years passed, you seemed happy. We met sometimes. After your husband died, you moved away. You were confrontational on the phone, belligerent. Drink was to blame. You accused me of always being a good girl, were envious because I knew where I belonged. Our telephone conversations became repeating loops, a model train going round and round a circuit. I heard the same news several times in 15 minutes. You remembered nothing of what I told you. The call stopped. You didn't want to talk anymore. I try writing letters and postcards so you know I care. Your daughter won't talk to me because I am divorced. I want to tell you I've traced your birth mother to the small village in Kent where my mother grew up. You have always been where you belonged. Thank you.
Oh, wow, you two, touching, moving, most evocative narrative poems, both absolutely gorgeous. Thank you so much. Thank you. Now we have Maura McNeil, who's going to read on behalf of Roger Martin, in gratitude for the resurrection of Joseph Bologna, Chevalier de St. George, and I'm sure I've said that wrong, but never mind. We'll get it right in a minute. And then Tim Stavert with Fine Red Wine. So here we are, over to you, Maura.
Okay, well, I'm going to pronounce it the exact same way you pronounced it. So if we're both wrong, we're in good company. In gratitude for the resurrection of Joseph Bologna, Chevalier de St. George. This hot, oppressive humidity stifles beauty, suffocates it beneath the odoriferous laden damp of fashionable cloth. Christ understood the foot binding of privilege, how Sardinian corporals and their acolytes sneer their cold commands, blinded and bloated beneath their sterile coats. Jesus, Buddha, Christ, my vision too is a tunnel, throttled in sweaty clothing. But a 2.5 century old Joshua Allegro by a Black man and 2 Black violinists have flattened the decades of sopping seams, left me homeless, left me lost in the litter. Rip off the heavy shirt, fuck the humidity. It is not bad. I need to find the layers, this other Mozart. He was with us and we could not go there. Omnipotence beyond comprehension. Tell me we can get there. We can get there, even if I cannot. Tell me that despite the iron before the ironing board, there will be a path, that the buds of my hedges will continue to sprout, that maybe Sardinian vineyards, which once worshipped corporals, but now bring earth into wine, can bring me to new growth, and Joseph Bologna, Hispaniola.
Right, it's the fine wine that got me there. So I called this fine red wine. A glass with a long thin neck, a stylish vessel glistening in the summer sun, filled with deep red wine from the gods, to give that smooth, fruity taste to my buds with a reflection from when and where it came. It has a rich aroma to every sip I take. I feel it flow down my throat with a warm breeze blowing through my hair as I take another sip while looking to the clouds high up. The beams of sunlight shining through, like the spirits of heaven joining me down here in the land of the grapevines and where our love grows, for the taste of the finest heavenly wine, finding where that is, only God knows.
Oh, that was really good, Tim. And Maura, thank you so much for reading on behalf of Roger.
Thank you, Maura.
I think that, like Tim, I would have picked up on the fine red wine, but I was so impressed that Roger managed to get the word odiferous in his poem. I thought that was rather wonderful. But yes, all of the vineyards and the new growth and the wine, it was the two lovely poems again. Thank you.
And now you'll see why I didn't do titles. Oh, Roger, amazing. And what was it? This other Mozart. I think that's going to stay with me. So again, I just want to send some love out and thanks to Roger, because it's such a shame he couldn't make the reading live, and he's done so much for the project, both this one and the original. So now, using titles as well, I'm going to introduce the next two poets. We've got Polly Stratton, who's going to read Song of Trees, and her partner Beth Sweeney, who's reading Nocturne. So over to you, Polly.
Thank you, Nina. Just checking that I am not muted. Yes, Song of Trees. Millions of years ago, they emerged, stabilized our land, strong and dignified Devonians. They sing. After rain, trees sing. Silent in drought, after rain, trees sing. Roots draw nutrients, leaves sniff the air. Birds disperse seeds from nature's great connectors, and people build homes to be near you, trees. You and the birds that voice your beauty and strength. In breathtaking moments, we hear your song through the seasons, unsure of how you know. Millions of years ago, trees came out of the dark to bring light and life and song.
When I first read Polly's call, I told her it was a special challenge for me to respond to it. And it's partly because over the years, I've written many poems about my namesake, Mad Sweeney. And so I've written many poems with birds and trees and singing in them. I'm not sure if you know who Mad Sweeney is. Probably you do, but he was a 7th century Irish warrior king who went mad in the middle of a battle and spent the rest of his life wandering through Ireland, living in trees, naked, subsisting on watercress and berries, declaiming poems and thinking that he was a bird. And when I first heard about him, I was very proud to have the same name as this poet in the past. So it's kind of a challenge to try to come up with a new kind of poem that was using some of the same concepts. During the pandemic, I completed a series of poems from the point of view of the wife that Mad Sweeney left behind. And then when I thought more about Polly's poem, I decided that my sequence was not complete yet. And so I added another poem to it. And this poem is, I changed the title. It's actually called Night Song. And it's about, in the poem, Sweeney's wife hears several sounds in their castle at night. I'll just put it that way. Night Song. Our son's cry jostles me awake. I run down cold, dark corridors that seem to ring with my own grief and fear. But at his door, I stop. Beyond it, all that I can hear is our son's soft, slow breath and someone singing. I can't distinguish words, only a sound that's like the sleepy twittering of birds when settling down at night in tall, dim trees, or like the rain, muttering to the leaves of drowsy trees, which whisper their refrain amid the last faint murmur of the birds. Or like your voice, its distant melody, some echo that remains. I press my ear against the door to listen to the rain.
Oh, what a fabulous response to my poem about trees. I love that you told us all about Mad Sweeney, Beth. That's just, I had to look him up. I'd heard of him, but I didn't know the story, but I did look him up. And to think that this has come about because of your surname, and to put it from the point of view of Mad Sweeney's wife was genius. I absolutely love Night Song. Thank you for reading it for us so nicely. And now we're moving on to Eve Rivka, Leaning on the Rings, and Nina Lewis, Forest Scents. So Eve, to you.
I always had the fantasy of what it would be like to be able to communicate with trees and animals and the like, of things we do not speak the same language with. Leaning on the rings. Dell touches the birch. The setting sun apricots the bark. Hands flat on rough and smooth, then forehead, eyes closed, no wishes, no portent, just touch and touch. Dell wants to feel nerves flowing through the rings of age, spin into roots large to hair thin, send messages to all the trees. I'm here, I'm with you. No axe in hand, no chainsaw. She whispers like talking to God, like prayer, merely words to self. She knows the tree speaks a language she can't fathom. In her human tongue, she cries for all the pain inflicted on the world. Not all humans, she cries, yet knows futile, as lost minds reign, birthing the end of times.
And what a poem to respond to. When I first received Eve's poem before I opened my email and saw the title, I thought she'd sent me a poem about wrestling, and I started to panic about my lack of sports knowledge. But I was quite fortunate, so I wrote this instead. It's called Forest Scents. Before she knew trees could talk, from her first crayon rubbing, when the wonder of wax bark appeared, she felt connected. Perhaps it was the countryside which surrounded her town with a halo of green, the years of family woodland adventures. Or it could have been the sensation of leaning back into nothing but air as she craned to see the rivers of sky between canopy, or the Celtic blood inside her, which witnessed the magic of trees, or the day she held her body against the trunk of the old oak and heard the secret conversation. She knew they were guardians of land, of each other, if only the rest of the world could see this truth.
Oh, two lovely poems to finish with. So lots of birds and trees and families and memories and wonderful life and death and all sorts. Just what a rich and varied selection of poems we've had tonight. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody.
I just want to say a quick big thank you to everyone involved in the project, just in case people scoot off. So just an incredible, just that really, just a huge amount of gratitude. I can't actually put it into words, which seems ridiculous as we've just written so many, but just thank you for being